Good afternoon. My name is Konstantin Livshits. I am the founder of the GrantiX platform. Today, I am the host of the Impact Show game. Impact Show is a conversation with people who create social projects with their own hands, projects that make the world around us better and kinder. We will show the behind the scenes of these projects. We will talk to those people who have created something new with their own hands. We invite founders to the Impact Show of such projects. On our Impact Show, you can not only tell everyone interested about yourself, but you can also earn money for your project. We hope for your interest and attention to the Impact Show. Enjoy the show.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Konstantin. Good afternoon, dear viewers. Today is the first episode of the Impact Show, a show where we showcase the lives, work, and interests of social entrepreneurs, those people who are making life better around us, around you. Our guests will talk about how they do it, what motivates them, what demotivates them, what they like and what they don't like. In short, we'll have a conversation. Here's how our show is structured: 10 questions. I ask a question. If our guest answers and I am satisfied with the answer, the money moves from here to our guest's account. Dear viewers, this doesn't mean that I'm the only one donating to the guest's project. You can join in. We would appreciate your feedback and your donations. So,
Good afternoon.
Konstantin, good afternoon. Let's get acquainted. My name is also Konstantin. I'm the founder of the GrantiX platform. It's a platform that helps social entrepreneurs attract investment. And today I'm also taking on the role of game master in Impact Show. Kostya, could you please tell us about
Your
project? Maybe a little bit about.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great responsibility and very interesting to be the first pioneer. A very interesting experience, 100%. Overall, I can say that my main focus at the moment is helping homeless animals primarily in the Balkans, specifically in Montenegro, Bosnia, Serbia, and other countries of the Balkan Peninsula. And I am creating a mobile application to help homeless animals, which is called TailBook. This application is essentially a kind of social network where you can literally create an animal's profile in just 5 minutes. For example, if you meet an animal on the street that needs help, or if you've taken it home and are caring for it but want to find it wonderful, loving owners, you can create a profile in just 30 seconds. This profile appears in the general system of profiles, and there are also options for assistance listed there. In other words, there is a certain path of help that the animal follows from unfavorable, unpleasant, and poor conditions on the street to a state where it is in a new home, happy, cheerful, and everything is good for the animal. Accordingly, in addition to this, we are of course working in various other directions as well. One of the directions was related to creating a veterinary service, and we are still working on it. This is a veterinary service where you can get a free consultation from excellent veterinary specialists. Primarily, it is for homeless animals, but not only for them, actually for all animals. We also organize the Homeless Animal Welfare Festival, the first of its kind in the Balkans. We are happy to invite you on August 15th to Udva. We would be glad to see you there. And accordingly, besides that, if I talk a little about where these ideas came from, I work quite a lot with impact projects. Overall, my focus was originally directed at human rights, at protecting people's rights, but taking into account migration, I also focused on issues related to animals because I was involved in this before moving to Montenegro. And now I wanted to find some unique, interesting way to work with this issue because I believe that modern solutions are not sufficient, we need not only to send messages to each other faster, but also to help our little brothers live better lives.
Thank you so very much for that. You introduced yourself to all of us in such a concise and brief manner, and at the same time, you managed to tell us everything that you do. Well, then, let's get started. Let's start with a question.
Yes,
Konstantin, please tell us about helping animals. Could you tell us what you need, the financial resources you are planning to raise for?
Overall, our initial goal is to launch the application itself because the app operates on a horizontal system where everyone contributes through any action. Feeding, giving water to an animal, taking it to the vet, helping it move to a new country or a new home. But for this, we need infrastructure. That is, of course, at this point, we have already actually created an app in the special programming language React Native, and accordingly, we need funding to maintain the existence of the structure, because hosting this application in stores, placing it on hosting services, creating the necessary pages, and storing photos of animals all require appropriate space. So if the community supports this initiative by helping with this infrastructure, it would be really great, because when it comes to adding more animals, I expect that the service will grow very quickly.
Kostya, and who is funding the project right now?
At the moment, I am funding it myself. We also have my friends who are also participating in the funding. And in addition to that, I can say that we have a small fundraiser on Patreon. We don't have very many subscribers there, but there are those who support us. And in fact, the part related, for example, to the domain and website hosting, we cover thanks to Patreon. So accordingly, it turns out that people are actually participating.
I will participate. Your first question. I will participate. Kostya, could you please tell me Istanbul? There are a lot of pets, cats, dogs, and overall, these are pretty happy animals. They all have kennels, they all have food, they all have a mild form of obesity. So everything is just as it should be. They're in a relaxed state. So why is this app needed? Maybe it would be simpler to just send money for their food. What's the point of this? Well, aside from your own entertainment.
That's a very interesting question. Actually, I have both a scientific answer and a factual one. From the perspective of what's really happening in Istanbul, I can share my feedback because I have researched this issue directly. Look, our proposal is not just about adoption. I think our goal is for all stray animals to find a home, but overall we are focused on making sure that a stray animal can be comfortable living even on the street, to the extent that it's possible. Because on the street, from the perspective of the 5 freedoms of animals, the animal is as free as possible. At the same time, there are serious dangers there. And when we, for example, talk about the example of Istanbul, there is a story connected to the tourist center. And there you see such a blissful picture. For example, I walked around other neighborhoods that are not very prosperous, and I can say that I met one of the girls. She herself was injured. She works at an establishment in a restaurant, and in the evenings she goes out specifically to bring food to the cats because no one else will feed them there. And there are cats there. I even still have photos. There were probably about 15 cats gathered in a small area, not in the center of Istanbul. It's a simpler neighborhood, and in fact, it's probably about 3 hours from the city center. Accordingly, the situation there is different. And when we talk in general about animals on the street, it's important to keep one serious thing in mind. An animal on the street, aside from the dangers associated with cars, with some strange people, with things related to sometimes the work of public utilities in certain countries, I have to mention this. When people don't like that there are animals here and they want to get rid of them quickly. Besides these things, there are also issues related to the health of the animals. And when we talk about health, for example, in a hot climate, bacteria reproduce quite well. No matter where they come from, they feel good and comfortable. And if you've noticed, quite often the cats in Istanbul seem to be crying, or it looks like they have something wrong with their ears or similar issues. These are all infections that, for example, in Montenegro's climate can potentially lead, I have to mention this too, to animals going blind. And accordingly, this situation, on the one hand, may seem, let me give you the example of Kotor, where there really are a lot of animals and tourists love them, and it seems great, but at the same time, the situation with their health and the health of the population leaves much to be desired. There are diseases like FIP. This is a serious immune disease with amigis, where the animal requires special treatment and special care. Visually, it doesn't show very much. But unfortunately, the animal dies rather quickly and in significant suffering. That's why the picture we see often does not reflect the real issues, the scale of the problem, or the feelings the animal is experiencing, because the main aspect of animal welfare is how they actually feel. Because we may have our own perceptions. But the most important thing is what the animal feels. And a street animal not only fights for food, not only fights for survival, for preserving itself and its offspring. For example, when we talk about kittens, that's a truly terrible story with cars and so on, but it also fights to be noticed. Because when all these animals are just, part of some crowd, that's one story. That's how it's perceived. In our app, we create an individual story for each animal as if each one is communicating with you. We automatically generate a description on behalf of the animal. It tells you about itself in a playful, amusing way. And in doing so, we take this animal, we bring each animal in the app out of the category of just some animal and turn it into a specific living being with its own needs, its own unique traits, its own story, one that might resonate with different people, even to the point where people may want to take them home. And that's why it's so important here. It's the social aspect because on the one hand, everyone knows there's a problem, everyone knows that people donate to help volunteers and so on, but at the same time, there are just so many of these animals. Another part of my task, and the reason I brought up the app, is the idea of coordinating assistance. Often there's a situation like your example.
From Istanbul. Now you're going to tell us everything about the project and all that, and it will end with two questions. Look, let's come back to this point later, because for now, I can clearly see that a tool like a modern social network can largely solve these complex problems we are facing. And accordingly, if we can find a way to solve this in a much simpler and more direct way, then why would we ever want to use a more complicated and resource intensive one? It just doesn't make sense to over engineer things. So, regarding this specific issue and the various factors involved, I have spent a lot of time thinking about it. 20. I'll leave it on hold. All right then. But we will definitely come back to this specific question with you a bit later on. In the meantime, please tell me more about your role. You mentioned earlier that your professional work is closely related to the relocation of people and that it is also deeply connected to the various complex problems that often arise with animals, specifically due to the fact that people are relocating to new areas. Indeed, many people are leaving and they don't have the opportunity to take their pets with them. But your work takes place in Budva in Montenegro, but people are leaving from other places, like here.
Here, yes, actually, the TailBook platform is universal. For example, Budva, Montenegro, is the pilot city where we just. By the way, Montenegro is small, and we have volunteers and interested people in every city. In fact, specifically in Budva, it's just the point where this idea was born. But the application itself is universal. This mechanism works in any country. In Budva, in Chile, in Paraguay, in Australia, it doesn't matter. The entire mechanism is not tied to your location, but it allows you to add any animal to this animal map with its needs and its requests. And even if it is living in temporary care, you can also indicate these details because the main idea is that you have touched on a very serious and important topic. The problem is that in many countries there is still no system in place for when a person cannot keep an animal and wants to transfer it to a shelter. If we talk about Montenegro, there are no cat shelters as such in Montenegro. There are some private initiatives, but there are no dedicated shelters. So cats are a complicated topic. I believe that there is no point in resorting to judgment or anything like that here. What's important here is to try to find a solution. Why do we see TailBook as a solution? A large social network, as you correctly pointed out, which TailBook is trying and planning to become, is capable of generating a large number of people who look at and see exactly those animals that are planned to be given away. Simply put, if we talk, for example, about Facebook, the situation is straightforward. I myself am a member of many animal protection groups, and there you can see up to 100 posts every day. Today, your post is at the top, but 5 minutes later, it's pushed down and no one sees it anymore. No one knows this animal's story, no one knows what happened to it. It's very difficult to find these posts. In our system, however, each animal has a specific history that can be traced. Each animal has its own profile card. You can subscribe to it and see absolutely everything that happens.
Konstantin, I can clearly sense the deep passion of a dedicated founder within your story. You seem like someone who lives very much in the future, someone who sees an incredible amount of potential in this project and truly deeply believes in its success. I am curious, have you already managed to successfully help with the complex process of animal relocation?
Look, to be objective, we have had cases where people were leaving and couldn't take their animals with them, and we were able to find new homes for those animals, including in Germany, for example. This took time, and it required that our network had the right volunteers who could take the animal in temporarily, and then they transferred it to its new home.
So, in other words,
It works. It works. It really works. That is, we used our social network for this purpose.
thank you, thank you, Konstantin. In what you are describing right now, I can really sense a very thorough and systematic approach. It sounds like a truly impactful social project that can be effectively scaled up to a much larger level. So, tell me, how exactly do you go about building and maintaining these vital relationships with your partners? How do you find them? Who are these partners?
Look, I'll try to be brief, but it's a big topic. First of all, of course, we primarily communicate with the local community, that is, with volunteers and with people who simply come to feed the animals. It all starts with building communication, literally with us coming to feed the same cat somewhere. That's the simplest question. But at the same time, we have our Instagram and we have an event that's specifically aimed at helping people get to know each other. That's exactly what Animal FFS Budvar is. This year, we also plan to hold a similar event in Sarajevo. And accordingly, this festival is growing precisely because we literally announced its launch just 3 weeks in advance. We brought together a great team of artists, painters, psychologists, people who work with animals, animal volunteers, and veterinarians, all of whom met together. And within the festival format, we held a day dedicated to helping animals. This networking is one of the ways to build partnerships. In addition to this, of course, I interact with local municipalities, with existing NGOs, and with volunteers who, for example, run private shelters. There are such volunteers in Montenegro, and I interact with them precisely to identify the problems they have so that the app can help solve them. Because overall, the app is designed so that, for example, imagine a shelter receives 6 new puppies. They need to photograph all of them, make a post on Instagram, and then that post just goes out there. With our app, you can create a new post, a profile card for that puppy in just 30 seconds. And then some people will already see it and can even come by to feed the puppy. So, accordingly, we are building the widest possible network of everyone who is interested, because I truly believe that we can attract the maximum number of people to this issue. And thanks to this, step by step, with any kind of contribution, we can solve this problem. And in addition, we recently became participants in the Sarajevo Sustainable Development Hub, and now we are building up in these connections with various kinds of social projects with the Sarajevo City Administration and with projects aimed at sustainable development. Kostya,
I really want to, but no.
but
No, I'll explain why. This is actually a very common pain for social entrepreneurs. It is very important for us that what we do is surrounded by social connections, by those caring partners with whom we do this. And we create this communication. We attract different people. They do this together with us. Very often, and you just demonstrated this very clearly, we do not consider financial partners. Look, this is very important. In fact, this is the task that GrantiX helps to solve with its platform solution. There are people who can help with their time. There are people who can help professionally. And there are those who do not have this opportunity, but they can help with money. And in your answer, one specific part of your response was taken to the absolute extreme, while the other you completely neglected to address or touch upon. This will help you attract the right kind of attention.
funds more actively. That's true.
Okay, fifth question. Is this your first entrepreneurial experience?
No, no. Actually, if we're talking about startups, then specifically an impact startup using social technologies, this is the first one. But if we're talking in general, I am actually in the field of, I was engaged in entrepreneurial activity in the field of law, so I understand it quite well in this regard. Accordingly, the other projects that have appeared and that I am currently involved in, for example, I am now working with European startups, specifically with commercial projects, but TailBook and everything related to TailBook is my first digital impact project.
Do you have any metrics, financial ones? For TailBook, are there any metrics you want to achieve?
Yes, of course. In fact, we are working very seriously on the issue related to the business model, because this is a question that always exists and we can't just ignore it. Even though it's very unpopular for founders to talk about this, it's reality and it has to be addressed. That's why, as we work on the business model, we're considering different options, ranging from subscriptions and community membership, specifically within the app, to models related to some kind of transaction fee for transactions conducted on the TailBook platform. Because TailBook, its important mission, and we're currently refining this aspect, is to be able to help to collect funds for animals' needs openly, transparently, and without any tricks in accordance with the reporting system. So our task is to establish this aspect as well. That's why among the models we have, there is of course a model related to partnerships. I actually forgot about these questions, but we did have experience partnering with certain beauty salons. And
Do you have any metrics? So we need a certain amount per month for maintenance. We want to achieve a certain revenue. We need to receive a certain amount in donations, these kinds of things.
yes, accordingly, to maintain the project per month in its current launched state, no more than 5,000 euros are required. At the same time, our revenue goal is quite simple. We have one part that concerns maintaining the app and another part that concerns helping animals. And accordingly, we assume for ourselves that if we know there are different fundraising platforms like DonorBox and so on. If in this situation we act as such a platform that can effectively collect funds, even 1% of donors from these platforms would allow us to reach 1,000 euros per year. And these are the funds that can truly provide significant help to animals. It's not 1%, I apologize, it's 0.02% of the current market volume. Considering that the area of helping homeless animals accounts for about 1/3 of all donations, and given that the donor box market, these various fundraising platforms worldwide, is estimated at $48 billion, it's clear that this goal is achievable. That's exactly why we are also trying to build a broad community.
Yes.
So, in fact, it turns out that our financial issues, people don't like to talk about them, but I always bring them up. And some colleagues say, oh, listen, you're always talking about that. Like, I just can't avoid talking about it. If an impact project doesn't have a financial foundation, unfortunately, it won't survive. We don't see grants as our goal. We don't look in those kinds of directions. The foundation is really about both community support and also the positive effect that the transaction system provides. Objectively speaking, it just doesn't exist.
Yes, simply put, without taking money into account, any project, it's like playing football without keeping score. Well, it's completely pointless.
Really.
Yours. Thank you. Let me add a little. Look, what you're describing here is that you have a unique identification card for every single animal. Well, you can just set it up on a monthly basis. This specific cat, dog, crocodile, or even a cute little elephant consumes this much food and care, and you can easily become its official sponsor to help out.
That is exactly it. You are saying exactly what it is right now.
All right. You have quite ambitious and far reaching plans, right? And they involve scaling your operations into entirely different geographical regions, which is a completely different and much higher level of entrepreneurial costs. Where exactly do you plan to secure the necessary funding from for all of this?
Actually, as a fairly experienced founder with this project, I'm considering different sources. There's a certain challenge that I've voluntarily taken on. Let me briefly try to describe it now. First of all, of course, we are initially launching the app in the Western Balkans, and we're making it as widely available as possible. We're observing the dynamics that unfold, gathering feedback from users, and improving what we have. And accordingly, at first, there will be aspects specifically related to supporting animals. We hope that a certain portion of our budget will come from there. In addition to that, objectively speaking, we are considering various socially oriented accelerators. We are looking at accelerators up to, for example, the Founder Institute, which are startup accelerators, because what we have here is a social impact startup. And accordingly, we are also considering venture investments. This is a big challenge because you see, there's a particular aspect when it comes to social projects. When you come, so to speak, with such a request, for example, within the framework of a grant, you encounter one set of questions. But when you come with this issue, for example, within the framework of a startup accelerator, you face a completely different set of questions. And sometimes even the model itself, through this social participation, can be very difficult to explain. Because we know such examples ourselves. If you recall, yes, they really do exist. But, for example, when we talk about the European market, sometimes it seems unclear how this will happen, how it will work. And I am very actively involved in this challenge because I believe that TailBook as a platform also has potential related to attracting investments. I am working very actively in this direction because I understand very well that operating on the global scale that is required demands from us that we attract a certain round of investment. In other words, TailBook also operates as a project, as a full-fledged startup. So this is essentially the direction we're taking. That is, we are attracting investments, working through this round, and accordingly preparing to fully engage in fundraising. Yes.
There's a historical anecdote about the Russian writer Turgenev, who had fallen on hard times financially in Paris, well, with problems involving Viardot and so on, as we all know. He goes to church to pray and sees a beggar. So the beggar says, "Help me." Turgenev approaches him, looks at him, extends his hand, shakes it, and says, "How can I help?" I would like to put it this way: how can I help?
This is in fact a kind of verification for us as well, for you and me. If I may, just a couple more words. It seems to me that when we take on a story related to an impact project, we should simply try everything. That's my sincere feeling, because I know of an interesting project from Bulgaria that's related to walking pets. And there, for example, the guys attracted exactly this kind of investment through an entire crowdfunding program. We're actually communicating with them now, learning from their experience, and most likely we'll launch a similar program ourselves because it turned out to be effective. Although, as a rule, entrepreneurs from abroad don't usually look in this direction, and that's a unique feature.
Yes, Konstantin, tell me from what I heard, right now. So, this is a project by a professional person who spent their entire active life working in Russia. Then, for a number of complex personal reasons, they made the significant decision to relocate to a completely different country. And now they are planning to replicate and establish a very similar kind of initiative over there as well, right? But you moved into the world, didn't you? Into the global one, in a world where, let's say, national borders are becoming much less defined, and your creative project is truly global in its reach. But how exactly are you going to address the complex issue of entering diverse foreign markets and successfully expanding into other countries? Communities that speak different languages.
That's a very good question. In fact, it's obvious that even now, in every country where we are actively developing our activities and preparing to launch the app, we are engaging with the local community. But it's very important to understand the local context. It's different everywhere. So we've actually done a lot of work to understand it. But I can say that participating in major programs really it provides both a great opportunity and excellent networking to be represented in other locations as well. For example, one of the recent cases is the Founder Institute, which allows us to interact with specialists who, for instance, have worked on Michelle Obama's social program or similar projects. And accordingly, in fact, I am trying to build my own network, specifically so that I have the opportunity, first of all, to create a two-level network. One level consists of specialists who work directly with the problem on the ground, who know the specifics very well. These are foundations, volunteers, and simply caring individuals. For example, we conducted a survey across 5 countries and received about 500 questionnaires with 80 questions each, which gave us a pretty good understanding of the situation on the ground. These are ambassadors on the ground, and this is interaction with people who are involved in relevant projects or who have experience in this area, who can in fact represent us either to the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals or to other similar associations. So, to be honest, I really believe in the power of networking, and the experience I have, it tells me that I am doing the right thing. At the same time, you raised a very good question. For example, due to the current visa restrictions, I wasn't able to attend the Web Summit. We participated in the Web Summit twice. I couldn't attend it precisely because I have a Russian passport. And, well, that's a peculiarity of the legislation. The point is that at one point in our country, obtaining a Schengen visa was simply completely shut down. No one could get one.
Language barrier.
The language barrier is... That's also a good question. Well, actually, for example, if we're talking about the Balkans, I'm learning the local language, plus
Which local language? There are different ones there.
You're right about that. Very good question. Basically, primarily, let's say I'm learning Montenegrin, but actually I understand it well. Bosnian, as it turns out, I understand it quite well. Slavic and actually Croatian, these are languages that are quite similar. And that's why communicating in the local language is very important for a founder. At the same time, English is a universal language, and it actually works quite well. Because even if we take examples from Bosnia, local conferences there, for example, on sustainable development and so on, they are held in English. So accordingly, we try to build communication both by interacting in the native language and still we work towards improving our English language skills. That is why I participate in conferences and various events, and I try to interact in every possible way. Sometimes we involve, let's say, brand ambassadors, who, for example, are fluent in languages such as French or Spanish, but in most cases, they are naturally bilingual. So we try to...
Relationships. Is the attitude toward you as Russian speakers normal, or are there obstacles? Is it normal, or are there barriers?
Look, I'll be honest, and this is a complicated question. I have not encountered any negative attitude toward me because of my nationality. Moreover, most people, even when I ask them how they guess, can tell that I am Russian by nationality. And accordingly, I can say that here, rather the difficulty is related to administrative procedures. For example, opening bank accounts, which has become a real headache for everyone. The issues related to compliance and things of that nature are a big problem. But here, friends, it's all about persistence. I went to 5 banks and the 6th one opened an account for me, and now I work. And accordingly, the point here is that we can still get it done. From the perspective of people, I can say that we have a certain peculiarity here, and within the framework of many impact projects, it will be present. We have a kind of universal language of, I don't know, love, empathy, and involvement. And here's an example. The Animal Festival that we organized, we had people from 10 countries, including New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Well, they were English speaking, so it was easier for us, but at the same time, we also had guests from Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia, and everyone. We had a really great time together. Afterwards, we exchanged feedback, and everyone understood everything. No one had any complaints. What was there to complain about? There were presentations both in the local language, in English, and in Russian. We were the people in the old town who talked about stray animals in Russian, and everyone enjoyed it. No one came and scolded us in any way.
Thank you. Making this choice is a significant investment in our communication. Konstantin, tell us, where do you envision your current project in a 5-year long-term perspective? Maybe not in such detail, but at least what is the priority direction in this project? How do you see its development?
I can say for sure that this year we are launching the app in the Western Balkans. Accordingly, on our part, we are doing this in Montenegro, Serbia, and Bosnia. Then, by the end of the year, I think we will already be in North Macedonia, Albania, Greece, and Cyprus. And then we plan that next year we will dedicate, first of all, to Spain, because Spain, despite having more favorable economic conditions regarding animal homelessness, is in 3rd place in Europe in terms of the severity of the problem. And that's quite a unique fact. Not everyone knows it, but we, accordingly, will be launching the app in Spain next. And accordingly, at the same time, we will also be involving people from Germany. We have the appropriate volunteers. We have non-profit organizations that will gladly look at the dogs in TailBook and for themselves, sort of choosing some wards whom they will place in new families. And accordingly, my goal over the next 3 years is for the TailBook app to be fully operational in all European countries. At the same time, in the third year, and I didn't mention Europe by chance, as most of it is the second year. In the third year, of course, we plan to expand to America and Canada, because these are quite large countries that also have rather serious issues with stray animals, because despite the large number of different organizations that help, nevertheless, the problem still exists there. There are difficulties both with finding homes and with subsequent tracking of the animal's fate to make sure they aren't abandoned again. In other words, there are local specifics there. And accordingly, if everything aligns, we might end up in America earlier, but the USA for us, this is a strategic point where we would like to present ourselves with a larger set of animal profiles, because it is very important to us that people from economically prosperous countries participate in these processes. We want to show it's not just about 3 animals. People often ask, like those in the Netherlands who claim they've solved the stray animal problem, though statistics suggest otherwise. Why should we help? When you explain, they realize TailBook isn't just a local story, as Montenegro's 600,000 residents can't solve this alone. Physically, financially, in any way, it's just not possible. So over the next 5 years, we plan to... The fourth year, Latin America, that's also a very interesting story. People in Brazil really love animals, but they also have their own huge set of issues. And in fact, every location requires adaptation. Most likely, the very last countries will be places like the United Arab Emirates, for one simple reason. They have very specific legislation there,
And
we take that into account.
okay,
We
y'all,
get to them later.
yes. Well, my 20 euros that haven't been transferred yet definitely won't be enough to cause this entire project to fail. Project. But maybe we've already, this is the second or third time we've talked about this, right? In your development, you generally remove the financial component. It's like you don't have it. You're aiming for a big transcontinental, if I may say so, project in situations where there is no movement of financial resources and a lack of cash flow. After all, we are social entrepreneurs. We need something to make this happen. Well, at the very least, yes, to digitize all the cats and dogs, for example.
But Konstantin, you are absolutely right about the magic part, in the sense that I am putting this code aside a bit.
Yes, absolutely.
But we can digitize this story with the help of the community. That's exactly where our focus is.
Look, please listen. I understand. I really do understand. But you really shouldn't underestimate the gravity of this situation.
I completely agree with you. That's true.
It will help solve many things. All right. So, the ninth question. We are finally almost there now. We are already incredibly close to our destination. Yes, we have finally arrived at the spot. What will you do with the money you receive?
Very good.
Question.
But
You'll even make a profit.
even, yes, I understand that, yes. The main idea is that the model itself, which is being built precisely as a business model, is based on standard things related to, and the standard income of an entrepreneur who is working on the project, which fits into the overall model, is that we don't burn through a ton of money and instead spend it wisely. At the same time, what are the main goals related to? We have a very big idea connected to a transactional platform, and precisely so that these transactions work worldwide, this development related to money transfers has...
No, Kostya, no, no. Now you've already made money. So you, Konstantin, as an entrepreneur, you've made money on the project. Let's say, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million, 2 million. You've earned it. What next? Where to?
To be perfectly honest with you, I actually have at least 5 more ongoing projects in this specific field. I would gladly reinvest, because such a situation would actually show that the idea I adhere to, the one at the core, is successful. And it would allow not only to create one application, but also to develop, for example, the private service, to develop the idea related to kind kitchens for animals. This idea exists as well. And honestly, I'll tell you objectively that, of course, everyone who has relocated has the goal for their family to be stable, for everything to be stable. And I have that goal as well. That's why I work extra, and in fact, I run the project in parallel, and accordingly, I I think that for me, everything will work out perfectly. And on my part, first and foremost, I would really like to finally be in a position where I can actually implement the ideas I have instead of constantly putting them off for later. For example, with the development I'm currently doing for TailBook, it has already been a full 2 years since I started. I don't want things to drag on for so long. So, objectively speaking, in terms of impact, as an entrepreneur, I would truly like to establish and launch a variety of additional strategic initiatives that will further strengthen and support this impact. Because TailBook by itself can become much more sustainable thanks to these additional initiatives developed alongside it, such as free vet or professional veterinary consultations. This mission is incredibly important to me personally because, well, I can objectively say that when we feel this pain, whatever it may specifically be in the social sphere, for me, it's largely about the fact that I find a profound sense of fulfillment and joy in doing this meaningful work. For me, it is like essential nourishment, the very air I breathe and absolutely everything else in my life. And especially when this project becomes successful, for me, it's a sign that I can do even more.
Kostya, I think I will go ahead and take that as a very modest and reasonable consulting fee. I'll take it as a modest consulting fee. It seems we're being extraordinarily literary and sophisticated today. That's right. Do you remember the wonderful film The Flight? When they're playing in Paris for money, they say, "You're a gambling man, Paramon. You are quite a gambler, Paramon. Look, you keep saying that you'll definitely make a lot of money on this specific project, and then you'll just reinvest all of it right back." That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I'll make money on this project, and I have a lot of family plans for where it will go. That's also a very good idea. But there's still something very important missing, something very important and especially crucial for an entrepreneur, particularly for a serial entrepreneur. When you carefully take the hard earned profits that your own business has successfully generated for you over time, and you wisely choose to reinvest it back into the market. Yes, these can be active investments, passive ones, but it's a kind of nest egg. Now, look, this is actually very important. It is incredibly vital because the very first thing you must do is ensure that you lock in your steady income, as that is absolutely number one. Second, by doing this, you effectively protect yourself against the potential risks of your next future investments. Okay. Well, and the 10th question.
Thank you, Konstantin.
Yes, the 10th question. Tell us about the mistakes you've already made.
That's a very good question. I can say that probably the first attempt at creating the project, probably as my mistake. I can say that maybe I should have chosen a simpler technology stack simply because of the implementation timeline, since we would have delivered the solution faster. The second mistake, probably it lies in the fact that when you have a long-term project, you need to somehow maintain team dynamics. That is, in reality, with a complex issue, part of the team can burn out or get tired. And probably I could have. I always try to create a very good atmosphere in our team. But probably I could have done something more to make it easier for the team to cope with various difficulties. Because part of our team changed. And at the same time, well, simply because people needed to move to another country. But that's not the most crucial thing. Perhaps the issue that became more pressing was related to financing daily life. And actually, I think I would also tie in a third point here. I don't think that or rather, I know that I did quite a lot. I made a lot of efforts in terms of financing. But I think I should have done even more so that the great people who could participate in the projects wouldn't be forced to leave, come back, and could continue working with the project. From the perspective of the idea, we conducted a very large study, and actually, I would probably say that the key issue is precisely that. It's also desirable to be able to make such decisions quickly. We built an MVP, we tested it, but then the stack we used became not very relevant. And actually, we probably should have pushed the product through a bit faster. Not by August of this year, but a bit sooner, because in that case, more people would have already appreciated the idea, and the first revenue could have started to form, the first revenue that this project really needs. It wasn't perfectionism, it was just actual development difficulties. But maybe we should have cut 1 or 2 modules to make everything go faster. So that's how I would put it.
Yours, but with explanations. But in the end, we did overcome this role of money. But still, it's important.
It is important. That's true. It's very important.
Kostya, the final score is 6-4.
Nice.
After all, in entrepreneurship, the score matters. But in impact entrepreneurship, in social entrepreneurship, the essence of what you do is very important. It was a real pleasure talking with you. You are an incredibly passionate person. You are doing a truly remarkable and absolutely wonderful job. It is incredibly essential and very much needed in today's world. And your specific approach to these challenges is very interesting. I have personally encountered various complex animal welfare issues in many different countries, Malungshan, including both wealthier nations and those that are less wealthy. But I must say that your unique approach is truly interesting and impressive. I am completely sure that we will be able to cooperate closely with each other in the future. With your project and on a very systematic level, the GrantiX has 7 areas of focus, and one of them is helping domestic animals, helping animals in general, both domestic and stray animals. So, in this case, systematic partnership just makes perfect sense.
That's great.
Thank you very much. This was truly a very interesting story with a very good outcome. In the near future, you will receive this money in your crypto wallet. This is probably the most straightforward and uncomplicated action we have taken throughout the entire day. To all of our wonderful viewers watching today, we would be very interested to hear your personal thoughts and detailed comments on what Konstantin has shared with us, and also on the significant role that beloved pets and helping stray animals play in your own daily lives. We would be truly and deeply grateful for your valuable feedback and any kind donations you can provide to support Konstantin's wonderful and inspiring project. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much, Konstantin. Thank you.